Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: dial it up to 6? Stronger storms spark calls for new hurricane category. Student loans cost women £10,000 more than men. Cancer diagnosis like King Charles's is not unheard of. You're only in the league because of your dad. A former NBA star has a warning for LeBron and Bronny James. Haley's voters might decide Biden's fate in November. Here's why. Dial it up to 6? Stronger storms spark calls for new hurricane category. South China Morning Post. Climate scientists have called for the introduction of a new hurricane category to reflect the increasing intensity of tropical storms. The Saffir-Simpson scale, currently in use, was devised over 50 years ago. The scientists argue that the most recent storms, such as Typhoon Haiyan, which killed some 6,300 people in the Philippines in 2013, have been too powerful to be accurately categorized. They propose the creation of a Category 6, for storms with winds of more than 192 miles per hour. The scale does not take into account water damage, which is the main cause of fatalities and devastation in hurricanes. Student loans cost women £10,000 more than men. Telegraph. Female graduates in the UK will be £10,000, $13,000, worse off under the country's new student loan system, according to research by London Economics for the Nuffield Foundation. The analysis found that women would pay on average £10,000 more in their lifetimes than they would have done under the previous system, while men would pay £7,500 less. The study also revealed that reforms had increased costs for lower and middle-income graduates, with higher-earning graduates able to pay off their debts more quickly. Cancer diagnosis like King Charles's is not unheard of. New York Times. King Charles III of England has been diagnosed with cancer after undergoing tests for an enlarged prostate. The type of cancer has not been disclosed, but doctors have said that some cancers demand immediate treatment whereas others can wait. Oncologists have said that blood cancers often require immediate treatment. However, it is not known whether King Charles's diagnosis is blood cancer related. You're only in the league because of your dad. A former NBA star has a warning for LeBron and Bronny James. ABC. LeBron James has expressed his desire to play in the NBA alongside his son, Bronny, who is currently playing college basketball at USC. However, Austin Rivers, son of former NBA player and coach Doc Rivers, has expressed concerns about the potential situation. Rivers, who played 11 seasons in the NBA, was often criticized and labeled a Nepo baby because of his father's influence. He believes that if LeBron were to play with his son, the criticism and scrutiny would be on a whole different level due to LeBron's immense popularity. Rivers hopes that Bronny can carve out his own identity and play for a team where he can establish himself. LeBron has stated that he would try to join whichever team drafts Bronny, even if it's just for one season. Haley's voters might decide Biden's fate in November. Here's why. CNN. Support for Nikki Haley in the early GOP contests has shown the segments of the Republican electorate most disaffected with Donald Trump, thus leading experts to believe Haley's coalition is not large enough to deny Trump the GOP nomination. However, there is evidence that her coalition is large enough to deny Trump the White House in a general election if her voters remain as alienated from him as they now say they are. Most polls show Joe Biden making only very limited inroads in a general election against Trump, with the kind of GOP primary voters displaying the most support for Haley, a universe centered on college-educated, ideologically centrist, and Republican-leaning independent voters. But surveys of voters participating in the Iowa and New Hampshire nominating contests show that most Haley supporters express deeply negative views about Trump. That could provide Biden an opening for greater gains in the months ahead, if he can resolve, or even temper, more of those voters' doubts about his own record, age, and strength. Longtime GOP strategist Michael Madrid, who advised the anti-Trump Lincoln Project in 2020, said the evidence of the early Republican results, and polls of GOP voters nationwide about the Trump-Haley contest, are sending the party a clear, but dual, message. On the one hand, Madrid said, all of these signals show there's not a lane for anyone else to get the nomination. This is Trump's party. But the same evidence, Madrid said, shows Trump is entering this race significantly weaker with the Republican base than at any time since he secured the nomination in 2016. The first stages of the battle for the 2024 GOP nomination have largely confirmed the party's divided attitudes about Trump, which have been seen in national surveys over the past several years. Depending on the question, somewhere between 1/5 and 1/3 of self-identified GOP partisans have consistently expressed negative views in polls about Trump, particularly regarding his role in the January 6, 2021, insurrection and his broader effort to overturn the 2020 election result. For instance, in a recent Washington Post University of Maryland national survey, between 19% to 23% of Republicans and independents who leaned toward the party agreed that Trump bore significant responsibility for the January 6 riot, that Trump threatened democracy when he told his supporters to march on the Capitol that day, that he was likely guilty of the criminal charges against him for attempting to overturn the 2020 election, and that the January 6 assault was an attack on democracy. That should never be forgotten. Likewise, in a recent CBS poll released on the third anniversary of January 6, about one-fourth of Republicans said they would describe the attack on the Capitol as an insurrection and an attempt to overthrow the U.S. government. Roughly 3 in 10 Republicans said Biden had legitimately won the 2020 election, and about one-third opposed pardons for the January 6 rioters, which Trump has signaled he will offer if elected to another term. More broadly, in the latest CNN national poll conducted by SSRS, just under one-fourth of Republicans and GOP-leaning independents said they viewed Trump unfavorably. Almost exactly the same share said the party would have a better chance to win in November with a nominee other than Trump. In a national NBC News poll released Sunday, 22% of GOP primary voters agreed that the Republican Party needs a new leader with better personal behavior and a different approach than Trump, while another 14% said Donald Trump was a good president, but it is time to consider other leaders. Across all of these questions, the share of Republican-leaning voters expressing negative views about Trump does not nearly approach a majority of the party. That explains why Haley faces such a steep uphill climb against him for the nomination, even though she has finally achieved the one-on-one race against Trump that his Republican critics have sought since 2016. Yet through Iowa and New Hampshire, despite not winning those contests, the former South Carolina governor has demonstrated that the minority of the party that has long expressed anti-Trump views in polls can be mobilized into a coherent coalition of resistance to him at the ballot box. And at a time when the nation is divided so closely between Republicans and Democrats, defection from even such a minority faction in his own camp could be difficult for Trump to overcome in a general election should he advance that far. Even if only about 1 in 10 ordinarily Republican voters would defect if Trump is the nominee, that's potentially significant in a close election, said Alan Abramovitz, an Emory University political scientist. In Iowa, the voters resisting Trump split between Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has since dropped out. In New Hampshire, they consolidated around Haley as the sole remaining alternative. But in each case, the GOP voters rejecting Trump have displayed similar demographic and ideological characteristics, according to the entrance and exit polls conducted by Edison Research for a consortium of media organizations including CNN. In each state, Trump showed significantly less strength among voters with a college degree than those without one, and much less strength among independents who voted than partisan Republicans. He also lagged among voters who identify as somewhat conservative or moderate compared to those who called themselves very conservative, and did not run as well among those who do not identify as evangelical Christians as those who do. This is not a casual vote, it's a really thought-out vote, said Celinda Lake, a longtime Democratic pollster who advised Biden's 2020 campaign. It has a whole schema around it, views about policy, views about temperament, about the criminal cases. It's a very integrated view about Trump. In the 2 kickoff contests, Haley voters in particular expressed strikingly negative views about Trump and his assertions about the 2020 election. In the entrance poll conducted of GOP caucus-goers in Iowa, almost exactly 4 in 5 Haley voters said Trump would not be fit to serve as president again if convicted of a crime, according to results provided by CNN's polling unit. Likewise, 4 in 5 Haley Iowa voters said Biden had legitimately won the 2020 election. In New Hampshire, more than 4 in 5 Haley voters said Trump would not be fit to serve again if convicted and that Biden had legitimately won. Fully 85% of Haley supporters said they would be dissatisfied if Trump were the nominee. The AP-NORC VoteCast poll offered similar warning signs for Trump. In that poll, 2/3 of Haley voters in Iowa said they would not vote for Trump in a general election. That number soared past 3/4 of her voters in New Hampshire. The Washington Post Monmouth University poll of GOP voters in South Carolina released last week showed Trump opening a resounding 26 percentage point lead over Haley in her home state, which will hold its critical GOP primary on February 24. Yet the survey also raised the same general election red flags for Trump as the Edison surveys in Iowa and New Hampshire. In the South Carolina poll, roughly 3/4 of those voting for Haley said they viewed Trump unfavorably, over 3/4 said Biden legitimately won in 2020, nearly 3/5 said Trump committed a crime in his response to that result, and less than 1 in 5 said they plan to vote for Trump in November. Smith said that the resistance to Trump surfacing in these early GOP primary polls will be a huge problem for him in the general election. Two factors largely explain it, he believes: hostility to Trump's role in overturning the nationwide legal right to abortion, which the U.S. Supreme Court did in 2022, plus people just not wanting the craziness and the chaos. Madrid said the cumulative evidence from the early election results and these surveys indicates that the component of the GOP coalition dubious of Trump is larger than most people have thought, and likely larger than at any point since he first emerged as the party's nominee in 2016. The Republicans critical of Trump were so isolated that we used to be on one group chat and now we are running out of muskets to hand out to be in the conflict, Madrid said. I think everybody you talk to will all say the same thing: something has shifted. Haley is becoming the rallying cry for something different and something bigger, and that tells me that the swamp fever has broken with a wide part of the Republican Party. Madrid estimates that the share of ordinarily Republican-leaning voters fundamentally disaffected with Trump has grown from around 6% to 8% in 2020 to as much as nearly 20% now. Still, experts in both parties agree that many of the Haley primary voters now saying they would not support Trump in November would eventually fall into line behind him if he becomes the nominee. Haley herself, of course, has said that if she loses the nomination she would vote for Trump over Biden any day of the week. Jennifer Horn, a former New Hampshire Republican Party chair who has become a fierce Trump critic, said, "I don't think that whole 30% or so of GOP voters coalescing behind Haley in the early states goes to Biden because amongst that 30% are folks that are very loyal Republicans. They might not be loyal MAGA, but we know there are people out there who simply won't vote for a Democrat. The key question for Biden," she added, "is how many of the others can he win over?" Jim McLaughlin, a pollster for Trump's 2024 campaign, said that Trump would suffer minimal defections in the GOP coalition in a rematch with Biden because Republican voters believe Trump's presidency produced far better results on the issues they care about than the current administration. As long as they think Joe Biden is a really bad president, Trump will still keep those voters now flocking to Haley, McLaughlin said. They will be voting their self-interest. They are voting their pocketbooks, the border, crime and safety. They are voting war and peace. We always say the presidential race is decided by the two P's, peace and prosperity. And on those two P's they look at Donald Trump and say, he did a better job. The CNN national poll released last week suggests that many of the Republicans skeptical of Trump are indeed making that calculation. In a hypothetical matchup against the former president, the survey found Biden winning just 6% of GOP partisans and independents who leaned toward the party, far fewer than the 23% of those voters who expressed an unfavorable view of Trump. One key reason: fully 93% of all GOP-leaning voters said they disapproved of Biden's performance as president. Similarly, in the new national NBC poll, just 8% of all GOP primary voters said they plan to vote for Biden in the general election, far fewer than the more than one. Move aside Megaloo, meet Speckles the rare piebald dolphin. ABC. Researchers from the University of the Sunshine Coast in Australia have recorded one of the world's most unusually colored dolphins for the first time in Australian waters. The dolphin, named Speckles, has piebaldism, a genetic mutation that causes partial loss of pigmentation, resulting in patchy coloration. Speckles was spotted swimming with 5 other bottlenose dolphins off Scarness Beach. The researchers found that Speckles was one of only 6 cases in the world where photographic evidence of piebald dolphins had been captured, and only the second to be documented in the Southern Hemisphere. Few journalists have the trust of their readers quite like Ross Gittins. The Sydney Morning Herald. Ross Gittins, economic editor for the Sydney Morning Herald, is celebrating his 50th anniversary at the newspaper. Gittins has been praised for his ability to explain economic concepts in everyday language, which has helped to transform and improve the quality of public policy debate in Australia. With a readership that spans politicians, Reserve Bank governors and teenagers, Gittins is seen as a doyen of Australian economic commentators and is considered an Australian institution. MetLife Stadium, other World Cup venues to install natural grass for tournament. Yahoo! MetLife Stadium, the venue for the 2026 World Cup final, has confirmed that it will install a natural grass field for the tournament. The decision comes after criticism of the stadium's current artificial turf, which has been blamed for injuries. MetLife is one of 8 venues that will need to switch from turf to grass for the World Cup. Other stadiums that will install natural grass include Lumen Field in Seattle and Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Unique flying reptile soared above Isle of Skye. BBC. Scientists have discovered a unique species of pterosaur, a flying reptile that lived 168 to 166 million years ago, on the Isle of Skye. The fossil of the creature, named Coleoptera, was found with wings, shoulders, legs, and a backbone, but the skull was missing. Pterosaurs were thought to mostly live in China during this period, so the discovery off Scotland's west coast was surprising. The finding is significant as fossils from this era, known as the Middle Jurassic, are extremely rare. The research shows that pterosaurs were common animals in Scotland during this time. NLRB official says Dartmouth men's basketball can unionize. What's next? Washington Post. The National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, has ruled that the Dartmouth men's basketball team can hold a union election, indicating that the athletes are considered employees of the school. The ruling by NLRB Regional Director Laura A. Sachs has sparked a debate over whether college athletes should be classified as employees. Dartmouth has the option to appeal the decision. This follows a similar ruling in 2015 regarding Northwestern's football team, which was later dismissed by the NLRB. The NLRB is currently in the process of deciding whether USC's football and basketball players are employees of their schools and the Pac-12 Conference. Southwestern School Board returns Buckeye Woods Elementary principal in student exam case. Yahoo! The Southwestern City School District Board of Education has unanimously voted to allow the return of a school principal who was placed on unpaid leave in January. Principal Jennifer Caulfield had been accused of being present during an improper medical examination of a 5-year-old, but no criminal charges were brought. Following an investigation, the school nurse involved resigned from her post. Should there be a Category 6 for hurricanes? These climate scientists say yes. Yahoo! A new study has proposed adding a Category 6 to the Saffir-Simpson scale, which currently measures the intensity of hurricanes from Category 1 to 5. The study argues that as climate change leads to higher ocean temperatures, the potential wind intensity of hurricanes is increasing. The study found that of the 197 tropical cyclones worldwide that reached Category 5 status between 1980 and 2021, 5 exceeded the hypothetical Category 6 threshold. The Saffir-Simpson scale only measures wind intensity and does not account for the impacts of storm surge and rain-induced flooding. In Pakistan, old hopefuls jostle to turn around struggling economy. Al Jazeera. Pakistan is facing a deep economic crisis as voters head to the polls on Thursday. The country is grappling with high inflation, widespread poverty, an aging public infrastructure, and a debt-to-GDP ratio of 72%. Pakistan's economic challenges have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, energy supply challenges, and natural disasters such as monsoon floods. The country consistently records large trade deficits due to its dependence on imports of food and fuel. Furthermore, Pakistan's currency, the rupee, has depreciated significantly against the US dollar, leading to inflationary pressures. The unemployment rate has reached a record high of 8.5%, and recent job losses have pushed millions of people into poverty. Pakistan's tax collection system is also weak, and successive governments have been reluctant to impose robust tax legislation due to fears of upsetting powerful business interests. The country is heavily indebted, with external debt reaching $125.7 billion last year. Pakistan faces $24.6 billion in external debt repayments by the end of June, the majority of which is owed to China. The new government will need to address these economic challenges and seek additional financing to repay its debts. Isaiah James scores 28, powers number 3 NC State to win over number 15 Louisville 77-67. Associated Press. Number 3 North Carolina State outlasted number 15 Louisville 77-67 on Monday night. Isaiah James scored 28 points for the Wolf Pack, who won their 5th straight game. Olivia Cochran led the Cardinals with 17 points and 12 rebounds. Virginia holds Miami to 38 points, wins NCAA leading 23rd straight game at home. Associated Press. Virginia defeated Miami 60-38 in a college basketball game on Monday night. Reese Beekman led Virginia with 16 points and 7 assists, while Jacob Groves added 12 points. The win extends Virginia's home winning streak to 23 games, the longest active streak in the NCAA. Miami scored its fewest points in a game since 1985 and set a program low for points in an ACC game. Virginia improved to 114-2 when allowing 50 points or fewer in the Tony Bennett era. Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood 6 doctor coming to you from the 6th dimension. I hope you're all doing well and ready for some news updates. I've got a mix of stories for you today, so let's dive right in. First up, climate scientists are calling for the introduction of a new hurricane category. They argue that the current Saffir-Simpson scale, which measures hurricanes from Category 1 to 5, is outdated and doesn't accurately reflect the increasing intensity of tropical storms. They propose adding a Category 6 for storms with winds of more than 192 miles per hour. It's about time we dial it up to 6, don't you think? In other news, a new study in the UK has found that female graduates will be £10,000 worse off than their male counterparts under the country's new student loan system. It's a tough break for the ladies, but hey, at least we're making progress, right? On a more royal note, King Charles III of England has been diagnosed with cancer. The type of cancer has not been disclosed, but doctors say that some cancers demand immediate treatment while others can wait. Let's hope he gets the treatment he needs and makes a full recovery. Moving on to sports, NBA star LeBron James has expressed his desire to play in the NBA alongside his son, Bronny. But former NBA player Austin Rivers has some words of caution for LeBron. He believes that playing with his son would bring a whole new level of criticism and scrutiny due to LeBron's immense popularity. Rivers hopes that Bronny can carve out his own identity and play for a team where he can establish himself. Let's see how this father-son duo plays out. In politics, support for Nikki Haley in the early GOP contests has shown that there are segments of the Republican electorate who are disaffected with Donald Trump. While experts believe that Haley's coalition may not be large enough to deny Trump the GOP nomination, there is evidence that her coalition could deny Trump the White House in a general election if her voters remain disenchanted with him. It's a delicate balance for the Republicans, but it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, let's take a break from all the serious stuff and talk about dolphins. Researchers in Australia have spotted one of the world's most unusually colored dolphins for the first time in Australian waters. This dolphin, named Speckles, has a genetic mutation called piebaldism, which causes partial loss of pigmentation. Speckles is a real standout among the dolphin community. In other news, Ross Gittins, economic editor for the Sydney Morning Herald, is celebrating his 50th anniversary at the newspaper. Gittins is known for his ability to explain economic concepts in everyday language, which has helped to improve the quality of public policy debate in Australia. He's like the Mr. Miyagi of economics. Now, let's talk sports again. MetLife Stadium, the venue for the 2026 World Cup final, has confirmed that it will install a natural grass field for the tournament. Goodbye artificial turf, hello lush green grass. Other World Cup venues, including Lumen Field in Seattle and Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, will also be making the switch. It's all about that natural feel, baby. In the world of paleontology, scientists have discovered a unique species of flying reptile, called Coleoptera, on the Isle of Skye. This pterosaur, which lived around 168 to 166 million years ago, was found with wings, shoulders, legs, and a backbone, but unfortunately, its skull was missing. It's a Jurassic mystery waiting to be solved. In the world of education, the National Labor Relations Board has ruled that the Dartmouth men's basketball team can hold a union election, indicating that the athletes are considered employees of the school. This ruling has sparked a debate about whether college athletes should be classified as employees. It's a slam dunk decision, but the game is far from over. In a lighter story, the Southwestern City School District Board of Education has allowed the return of a school principal who was placed on unpaid leave. The principal had been accused of being present during an improper medical examination of a 5-year-old, but no criminal charges were brought. It's a tough situation, but hopefully, things can get back on track for everyone involved. Finally, back to hurricanes. A new study is proposing the addition of a Category 6 to the Saffir-Simpson scale. The study argues that as climate change leads to higher ocean temperatures, the potential wind intensity of hurricanes is increasing. The current scale only measures wind intensity and doesn't take into account storm surge and flooding, which are major causes of damage and fatalities in hurricanes. Let's hope this new category can help us better prepare for the storms of the future. That's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the news roundup. Now it's your turn to join in on the discussion. What are your thoughts on adding a Category 6 to the hurricane scale? And how about those piebald dolphins? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the sixth dimension. Note, the news stories have been summarized for brevity. Please click on the links to read the full articles. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.